The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Friday, February 24th, 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. Today marks the 1-year anniversary to the day that Vladimir Putin's forces invaded the sovereign nation of Ukraine, and Ukraine is still standing strong. I have been covering it in some detail over the past year, primarily from the perspective of the Putin propagandists that have been propped up in this country to dismantle the anti-war left here in the United States of America. And I would say this: if Vladimir Putin's army had been as good as his propaganda, then Ukraine may have fallen already. But thankfully, he has been reduced. Vladimir Putin has been reduced to conscripting prisoners, poorly trained individuals, people who don't want to go. And he has been sending them to their deaths. Some 200,000 Russian soldiers have been killed in Ukraine in 1 year. For context, some 400,000 Americans were killed in the entirety of World War II. I have some audio from President Zelensky that I will play later as he discusses some of his disappointments, but I want to discuss China. And earlier this week, we covered Secretary of State Antony Blinken outlining the possibility that China would be sending lethal aid to assist Russia's efforts in Ukraine. Now, China has roundly denied these allegations, as we discussed earlier this week. But today, China put out a statement with 12 points pointing towards a path towards peace in Ukraine. I'll read some of those points for you as well. But it just strikes me. It strikes me that we have now been in a full year of Vladimir Putin's decision to break the global consensus that only allowed war in the global south. Sorry, I don't know if you saw that one coming, but I just want to be sure about something as I hear the reporting going on about this being the first war in Europe since World War II. It never escapes my mind or my memory the fact that all the wars that have been waged since World War II have been waged in the global south, primarily because the global consensus has been, let's not go to war in first world nations. And I use that language very loosely. The only reason there is a quote unquote third world is because it is exploited. I'm going to get back to Ukraine in 1 second, but this is a distinction that I want to take some time to make sure we all have lodged in our hearts very clearly. War never stopped. There's never really been an actual post-World War II peace. So to lament what Vladimir Putin is doing because he's brought war to Europe, well, then, come on, folks. But I digress. That's not the point of today. Today is marking the fact that Vladimir Putin had enough gall to believe he had the right to overturn the global order in order to expand his empire. The exact words that he said at the beginning of this was to call Russia an empire, which strikes me kind of strange when you consider all of these so-called anti-imperialist and anti-war leftists who have aligned with Vladimir Putin, and they have done so underneath the idea that the path towards peace is for Ukraine to surrender, which is one of the most sadistic and malevolent positions to have come out of any conversation on any issue. I don't care what issue, where you stand, for a person to tell the victim to lay there and take it is one of the most disgusting positions that I've seen in my lifetime. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. If Putin's military forces were as effective as his propaganda, particularly propaganda being propped up right here in the United States of America, if his troops were that effective, then I believe that Ukraine would have fallen. But his troops are not. His troops are a bunch of conscripted men who don't want to be there, prisoners who are trying to trade their bodies for freedom And unfortunately, they're all turning up dead. 200,000 Russian soldiers have been killed in Ukraine because of Vladimir Putin's ambition. And I say unfortunately because, I value life. I value life. But in times of war, people are going to die. And these Russians are being sent to their death in Ukraine, and they will continue dying until they leave. So the conversation about peace is giving Vladimir Putin the ability to position himself as some type of helpless pawn in this entire situation. If he wants peace, go home. Otherwise, it seems as though the Ukrainians are going to continue sending these poor boys and men home to Russia in body bags. And truth be told, the mass grave I saw in some footage today suggests most of those bodies aren't even making it home. I'm sorry to be so grim on today, but as I consider the past year, from the comfort of being inside of the American empire where we don't have bombs dropping on us versus all of the death and destruction that is being brought by the ongoing wars across this globe. How many lives are taken because of the political ambition of men? Now, in the backdrop of China sending or releasing their peace plan, their 12-point peace plan, President Zelensky of Ukraine has announced that he intends on meeting with China, President Xi Jinping. This news is just coming out in the last few minutes. Ukrainian President Zelensky on Friday said he planned to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping about China's proposed peace plan released on the first anniversary of the war. This is according to Yahoo News. China started talking about Ukraine, and I think it's a good thing, Zelensky said at a news conference 1 year after Russia's invasion. But it actually begs the question, what will these words be followed with? The next steps are important. Again, as I stated today, China's foreign ministry announced a 12-point proposal that called for a resumption of peace talks and an end to all unilateral sanctions against Russia. And it emphasized its opposition to the use of nuclear weapons. It also stressed that territorial sovereignty should be upheld, but it remained vague on what that meant for Russia or Ukraine. Now, that's the key thing here. Putin tried to present an so-called opportunity for peace if the international community would recognize and Ukraine would relinquish all claims to the areas that were occupied by Russia so far during this war. And a lot of those that were annexed by Russia. Now, some of those territories have been reclaimed, but the question remains, how many millions of acres does Ukraine have to surrender in order to satisfy Vladimir Putin? This is the thing that gets me. I know that there is war constantly across this globe that doesn't get mentioned nearly as much, if at all. The war in Yemen, for one. We've talked about that every year. I mean, the world just looks away as hundreds of thousands of children are starved to death because of what Saudi Arabia is doing in Yemen, right? The Syrian civil war, covered that extensively, definitely at the beginning. I think I covered it for up to 2 years, and it's still going on. It gets coverage, but of course, it's the latest war that gets all of the coverage. I am not playing down what's going on in Ukraine. I just want to make sure that we have the proper recognition of the fact that war is ever present on this global stage, and it is ever present, particularly in Middle Eastern nations and the global South. Now, of course, these politicians are not going to call it war. They're going to call it special operations, much like Vladimir Putin is doing to Ukraine, calling it a special operation. And at one time, it was the case that every single war was opposed by the anti-war left, the anti-war Americans, anti-war internationally. It's fascinating that in this one particular war, those people who have been fighting against all the clashes that are happening, the wars, the skirmishes, the bloodshed that happens every day around this globe, all of a sudden threw their hands up and said, the way to peace is by allowing Vladimir Putin to finish his war in Ukraine. The other thing that bothers me so tremendously so about this war is the fact that so many international players and actors and nations are still looking at Vladimir Putin as a legitimate leader, as a legitimate actor on the global stage, when he has disrupted the entirety of Western civilization's so-called peace that has existed since the end of World War II, 1945. And again, that was peace in Europe. That was peace between the major powers. That was peace between major capitalist nations, right? They had the ability to have a period without war between them when they were all committing their own special operations in the Middle East and the global South. But to see the people who champion the post-World War II order, and I'm thinking holistically, I'm thinking academics, scholars. I mean, the post-World War II order is one of the most studied areas of social sciences, political science, international relations. That's what I have my master's in. So just to thinking of all of the academics, all of the scholars, all of the politicians who have yet to take a stand against Vladimir Putin directly because of the threat that he poses to their order, right? This is y'all's order. Most people on the face of this planet are simply trying to find our way of how to survive and or thrive in an order that was agreed upon, signed in blood, the blood of World War II. And here we are, a full, complete year in an all-out assault on that global order. Most directly right in Ukraine. This is why the battle in Ukraine is so important for the international stage, beyond just our humanity, beyond compassion, beyond being anti-war, genuinely anti-war. It's also important because we are now one full year into an all-out assault on the global order. And it's not very reassuring when this proposed order of Vladimir Putin, this pan-reactionary global movement that wants to make us think, the selling point that they have for us is how bad things are right now, right? How much bloodshed is happening right now. Well, it's not really assuring. It's not reassuring to me or to anyone of good faith who can look at what Vladimir Putin is doing in Ukraine and honestly say that what he is presenting to the world is a better world order. And maybe I'm just concerned for no reason. Maybe this is not even a possibility. Vladimir Putin's ambitions perhaps are delusions of grandeur. That is, unless, of course, other nations provide them with military support that they would need to actually be victorious in Ukraine. Yeah. Malcolm X's family is announcing a lawsuit against the CIA, the FBI, the New York Police Department for wrongful death. I'll be reading an update on this from PBS NewsHour. The family of slain civil rights leader Malcolm X marked on Tuesday the anniversary of his 1965 assassination by announcing plans to sue agencies including the CIA, the FBI, the New York Police Department, and others for $100 million, accusing them of playing a role in his death. Two of his daughters were joined by attorney Benjamin Crump at a news conference at the site of the former Audubon Ballroom in Upper Manhattan, where Malcolm X was fatally shot as a crowd gathered to hear him speak on February 21st, 1965. For decades, questions have circulated over who was responsible for his death. This is the key part. 3 men were convicted, but 2 were exonerated in 2021 after a renewed investigation into the case against them showed the evidence used to gain convictions was shaky and that authorities had held back some information. Truth of the matter is about this is that the United States of America has had enough fear of a so-called Black Messiah to kill almost an entire generation of civil rights leaders. Fred Hampton, Dr. King, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, just all of them, some of the key leaders of an entire generation of revolutionaries in the black community of varying degrees, the entirety of the civil rights movement. I mean, these are some of the core leaders. And J. Edgar Hoover himself said that something needed to be done about Malcolm X. And as I believe it was Benjamin Crump pointed out, less than a year later than J. Edgar Hoover said that, Malcolm X was dead. We all know, of course, that the FBI was surveilling every single one of the key leaders in the civil rights movement. So this comes as no surprise. In fact, many of us have asserted this for some time. Just we never really felt that the story was complete. And so more information is going to be found out now through this lawsuit. And I'm really interested in seeing what is going to come out. What truth, what role did the United States government have in the murder of Malcolm X? And I'm sure Discovery, if there's any documents still unclassified or documents that have not been destroyed, if there is information to be had, this is the way. This is one of the best ways to get that information for us to see very directly how the FBI targeted black leaders because of their fear of a black messiah. Why do you think that is? Why would you need to be afraid of a black person coming to set black people free through uniting black people with marginalized communities, such as poor white people who are not entrenched in their racism? Why do you think it is that the United States of America would be terrified of that, so much so that they would go on a killing spree? That's the kind of thing that I would love to have information on. I hope that this lawsuit not only compensates the family who has had to live the majority of their lives without their father, but I also want some more insight, because we have enough information to understand that this is what they do. I was going to say this is what they did, but no, this is what they do. So it's not to convince us that the FBI and the CIA and the United States government, generally speaking, is a malevolent actor when it perceives anyone to be remotely a threat to their order. That conversation is juxtaposed nicely with the last segment, but I digress. We know this about the United States of America. I just want to see some stuff. I want to see it in writing for the public to see just how committed to undermining not just black solidarity and black unity, but black solidarity and unity with other communities that would definitely pose a threat to the prevailing white supremacist order that controls the United States of America. Do you need further proof that America is a nation steeped in white supremacy? Tomorrow, Saturday, February 25th, is slated to be a quote unquote day of hate. It's organized by Nazis across the country, particularly Nazis in the state of Iowa. Federal authorities are warning that neo-Nazi groups plan to hold rallies all across the nation to hand out anti-Jewish and anti-Semitic information. I really wish I could pause and play for you the video of the Nazis who were dressed in their Bermuda shorts in Florida, who were harassing Jewish people as they left, I believe, a Jewish heritage center or their synagogue. They were harassing them with a bullhorn, saying the most vile things that you can imagine to say to a Jewish person. I wish I could play it for you just so that you could see how committed these people are, how truly anti-Semitic, but sometimes that word just doesn't capture, truly Nazi. Like, We're dealing with an entire generation of young Nazis, primarily white, rich boys who have enough money to fly around the country and attend their Unite the Right rallies and drive their big trucks all the way to Washington, D.C. for January 6th. We're dealing with well-to-do, primarily white conservative men who just need a group to hate. And tomorrow the hate is being pointed towards Jewish people. Hell, every day that hate is pointed towards Jewish people, black people, Muslims, gay people. This is one of the reasons I have no problem making sure that we fight for complete and total solidarity of all groups who are not a part of that. All groups who are threatened by Nazism, fascism, white supremacy. Every group who is threatened by those fascists. We must unite and have complete and total solidarity with one another, despite all of our differences, despite our differences in beliefs, despite our differences in sexual orientation and identity, just whatever it is that divides us. What we have in common is an existential threat from right-wing extremism in the United States of America. We must unite. If we don't, then we will die separately. And one of the things that this group, these right-wingers, these Nazis, these fascists in this country, because listen, there's no longer a big gaping hole between gap or space between the establishment Republican Party and the far right-wing Nazis. They're the same party now. They are all the same. Look at the support that Ron DeSantis has in the state of Florida of actual Nazis waving swastika flags right next to Ron DeSantis country flags outside of his event. Okay. Nazism in the United States of America, fascism, is open, loud, and proud. And they are after each group that I've already listed and other groups just anyone who does not fit neatly into their little group of their so-called supreme Aryan race. Of course, they will tolerate the Candace Owens. They'll let her come and do the dirty work. They'll tolerate a Ben Shapiro. They'll let him come and do their dirty work of laundering their white supremacy and their anti-Semitism for paychecks. The fascists will tolerate some diversity so long as that diversity helps them. But at the end of the day, of course, Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro will both be on the wall with the rest of us. And these are the people who are planning the hate rally tomorrow. A day of hate. I honestly, you know what? I don't have anything else to say about that other than unite. People of good faith around the world, we must unite.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions. Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Well, if you wanted to get a capstone story to encapsulate almost everything I talked about today, hashtag Marjorie Taylor Greene is so dumb is trending. I know you're going to, I know you're like, well, Ben, how does that connect with everything you're talking about today? Well, it starts off with her tweet from last night that she deleted, where she was trying to throw Ukraine under the bus by calling out President Biden. And here's how the tweet went. This is a quote from Marjorie Taylor Greene. $113 billion has been appropriated to Ukraine in just 1 year. Trump's wall will have only cost $22 billion, but Congress refused to fund it. Watch this. 6 billion people illegally crossed our border since Biden took office, but Ukraine's border is the only border that matters to Washington. There you have it. White supremacy juxtaposed with the war of Putin in Ukraine. Their conservatives are doing their best to undermine Ukraine first and foremost, right? Of course, you know, I do want to talk about hashtag Marjorie Taylor Greene is so dumb, but I just have to point out the reason she's being called out for her stupidity is because she pressed send on the tweet and didn't really pause to calculate that there's only 7 billion people on the planet. So if 6 billion people crossed our border, yeah. Now, could it have been a typo? I'm not sure. I think most people's brains would have caught that. There's only 7 billion people. 7 points. I know we crossed a little bit higher than 7 billion. I'm sorry, but she really is that dumb. But I don't want to linger there too long because that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is for you to see in this. Of course, she ties in the racism of building the border wall, which is nothing more than a dog whistle, red meat for the same racist Republicans who not only support Donald Trump to this day, but have now started to pledge their allegiance to Vladimir Putin. So there is how can I say this? People like to point out, oh, Ben, they're Nazis in Ukraine. Yes, there are. And anywhere you get an overabundance of white people, there are going to be some Nazis. It's just what it is. People also say they're racist in Ukraine. Yeah, we saw some racism in Ukraine, and anywhere you get an overabundance of white people, you're going to get racism. That's just how this planet seems to have worked out. Was it inevitable? You could talk to evolution about that, but here we are. But here in the United States of America, we have a political party that has the perfect marriage between Nazism and racism, white supremacy and fascism. That is the Republican Party, the grand old party. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, I have to throw in the ignorance, right? Before I even bring up Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's not only the perfect marriage between white supremacy and fascism, but it's also the perfect marriage between white supremacy, fascism, and ignorance, rejection of truth, rejection of objective truth and scientific data. The whole matter of fact, it's a rejection of the scientific method altogether. That's what we have going on as one of our two major political parties in the United States of America. And so when you talk to me about the war in Ukraine that's being led by Vladimir Putin, I also look at who is supporting him. The likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who loves nothing more than to revel in her bigotry, her racism, her fascism. The likes of the Republican Party, the likes of Tucker Carlson. These are the people who are supporting Vladimir Putin. And I'm sorry, listen, for whatever number of Nazis are in Ukraine, for whatever number of racists that are in Ukraine, anyone who is aligning with the fascists who are attempting to erase Black history in this country, a political party that has people advocating for the murder, for the execution of gay people in this country, who want to enforce their religious belief with the force of law in this country. Those are the allies of Vladimir Putin. That lets me know where I should fall on this. Not just the general principle of Vladimir Putin is the invader, but when I look on the periphery of who's supporting him, there is not a person of color, a marginalized person on the face of this planet, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, otherwise, whatever you believe, whatever you don't believe, there is not a person who benefits from a global order that is headed up by the likes of Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the rest of the reactionary, pan-reactionary bigots that are their supporting cast. America may be bad. I mean, I might need to say it every day. God bless goddamn America. America might be, what did Trump call Haiti? Called it a shithole country? No, that's the United States of America. That might be the United States of America, but can I tell you what would be worse? A country controlled by the likes of the current Republican Party, who are in bed with the likes of Vladimir Putin. That is a world order that cannot be allowed to come into reality. Folks, that's all the time I have for today. The live show is tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to go to our YouTube page and our social media to get access to that. We will be having a blast. See everybody there. If not, I'll see you Monday.